everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, good.
How's everybody doing? Good?
I haven't passed out any microphones yet.
I can see that. Well, I hope everybody's doing well.
Hello.
Yeah, okay. I'm just gonna, I guess as people come in, I'm gonna start passing out some microphones, maybe.
The three of us on the top, we're all together. So that just so you know, everybody, Courtney, Lee, and I are together. So we're trying to go to a different spot. Well, I'm sitting with Court, but he's in the basement.
I'm in the basement.
Yeah, there you go. See, I can't even hear you from here, so that works.
It's perfect. I found one of those like really cool round Papasan chairs from the 70s, and I'm all like curled up down here. So it's great.
Yeah, okay. I think we're ready. It's 4:01. We might as well get started. Can our co-host, can you take care of the microphones? Do you mind doing that?
I sure can.
And welcome to everybody who's joining us to our Balf Nation Reads book chat. And you guys said you can hear me okay, right? I wasn't happy with how my voice was showing up last time, so I switched to earbuds. But anyway, so this is our fourth Balf Nation Reads book chat, and while we're waiting for everybody to show up and get in, Balf Nation Reads just kind of started on a whim because everybody who is involved in reading books together through and who met on Twitter from Katrina Balf's CB Book Club wanted to continue chatting and reading about books. So we gave it a go. Our first book was Shuggie Bain, which we read, gosh, I think that was back in June. And it was really a hit for a lot of people. So we just kept it going. And so thank you to all of you who come consistently, whether it's just to kind of scroll through the comments or to listen in or to give our comments. It's really fun to chat books with everybody. And then the books that we choose are recommendations that have come from Katrina in the past. So that's kind of where we are for anybody who's joining us who just really wanted to talk about Julie Clark's The Last Flight, which is the book chat that we're on this month. The connection to Katrina is that back in 2020, when this book was on the New York Times bestseller list and had just been released, Katrina posted on her Instagram that she had been Book of the Month guest judge for Book of the Month, which is a company that sends out 5 books for people to choose from if you're a member of that group, and you can pick one each month to be sent to you. And she chose this one as her choice for that month and recommended on her Instagram page. The post is still there if anybody wants to see it. And just as we're getting started, I just want to remind everybody that there is a new feature for chatting with comments, which is at the bottom of your screen. You can add a chat comment in there. Those do show up when this is a recorded space. So when we do post the final recording of this chat, the comments, just so you know, will be posted along with the chat thread when I post it when we're done here today. So just be aware of that. Also, since it is a recorded space, keep in mind that as you make comments, it will be posted later. So it's a public space. Anybody can listen in at any time. And you can see that it's being recorded at the top of your screen. For people who want to have some captions on, even if you're listening to this as a recorded message later, there are 3 dots at the top if you expand your recording space that you can tap on, and it will put in captions for you in English at the bottom of the screen. I've tested it out a few times, and it actually is pretty accurate and goes right along with the conversation at the same pace. So if you're someone who could benefit from captions, feel free to turn that on. I can't do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. And then lastly, about the microphones, we have 10 speakers that we can pass out microphones for at a time. So we try and switch that up and offer the microphone to different people who may not have spoken. So if you know that you have a comment that you'd like to make, we encourage you to tap on the little heart. Mine looks like a heart plus icon at the bottom. And if you tap on that, you can use emojis and raise your hands. You can also request to be a speaker from that space. So don't feel like if we've moved on from a question or a comment, if you didn't get a chance to say what you wanted to, that you can't go back to it. You always can. This is an open, really casual book chat that we're just trying to do together in this space.
And also too,
Go on.
I was going to say, and also too, with the 10 speakers, if you notice that your speaker privileges went and you're back to being a listener, that doesn't, we're just trying to shuffle and let everybody have a chance to speak. So it doesn't mean you can't re-request again to be a speaker, because we would love to hear from you. It just means that we're shuffling through who's speaking and who has questions and comments.
Yeah, and so our co-hosts today are Lisa and Lee, who thankfully join us every time to help with all of the logistics of keeping the conversation going. It's not that difficult to do, but it is, something else to keep an eye on with the microphones and things. So they try and keep an eye on all of those things. And don't forget, if you have something you want to say, please raise your hand. We love to hear from as many people as we can. So I'm not seeing that a lot of people have speaker. You have to accept your speaker privilege, I think, right, Lisa? Is that correct?
I haven't seen any requests.
Okay.
So if anybody wants to send me something,
you have to. I think you have to request. Stacy, I'm sending you an invitation to speak. I don't know if you're getting it, so let me know if. And then there's also comments on the side. Okay.
Yeah, like some quiet bunch today. Nobody seems to want to.
That's okay. We'll start talking, and then people join in. Let's see. I'm just fixing one thing before we move on. And sometimes, you know what? My mute everyone button is right next to my microphone button. So if I do that at least once a chat, that I mute everybody. So I apologize in advance if I do that. All right, so let's.
It happens. I mean, and even with moving around the speakers, I unfortunately have removed people from the chat by accident, and then have to re-add them again because I pressed the wrong button.
Yeah,
so, bear with us.
Yeah, but it's almost always me, Lisa. Let's be honest. Okay, go ahead, Lee.
Also, you may have speaker privileges, but if you stop talking and you don't mute yourself, I may jump in there and mute you. So don't take it personally. We're just trying to cut down on the background.
Well, because there's sometimes background noise. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Okay, so our book today is called The Last Flight. It's by Julie Clark. And this was a big, big book that was recommended by a lot of people in 2020 during lockdown. It made the list of people's best books to read during the coronavirus pandemic. It's on USA Today's 5 books not to miss, Target Book Club pick for 2021, Simple Best Books of 2020, Most Anticipated Thrillers of the Spring. So many. There's a long list. And if you enjoyed this book, by the way, Julie Clark is the author. She's really actually an interesting person. She's a school teacher. She teaches the 5th grade. And she writes early in the morning, which I just listened to a podcast interview of her this morning. And she apparently she sets her alarm for 3:45 in the morning when she's most creative, and writes from 4 to 6 a.m. and then goes and teaches for a full day. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure my brain is awake in the morning at that hour to be creative, but I think this book is just so impressive in how she wrote it. It's really amazing. It was on the New York Times bestseller list for quite a long time. So to get us started off, the New York Times book review about this book, remember this came out during the first lockdown. It's hard to become engrossed in a book just now with so much noise crackling inside and outside of our heads. But The Last Flight is thoroughly absorbing, not only because of its tantalizing plot and deft pacing, but also because of its unexpected poignancy and its satisfying, if bittersweet, resolution. The characters get under your skin. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments that they want to say about this book? I mean, otherwise I'm going to be following some of the notes that I made from our Twitter book thread, which I've been following all day. It's really fun to see I see some of you who have commented there are here again today. It's really fun to see those comments and the different perspectives. It was really gratifying to see that I wasn't alone in being shocked more than one time at some of the plot twists in this book. So I'm interested to hear what people have to say. Stacy, why don't you start us off?
Hello. Just going off of that book quote, I definitely got completely absorbed into the story. And anybody knows me knows that I sometimes struggle with books and finishing them. I've abandoned so many. still working on finishing Bees, and that thing has been out a year. But I'll do it soon, I promise. And actually, I elected to listen to the audiobook this time. I thought I've struggled with the past few books. As much as I really love the story of Shuggie, I got stuck halfway through. It's a lot to like sit and read. And so I figured I spend a lot of time in the car commuting to and from work. So I'm going to give the audiobook a try. And I found myself listening to it even when I was I would actively like not go on the computer or not watch TV. And like, I was like at home by myself, just listening to this audiobook because I couldn't wait to find out what happened next. So I was like so engrossed by the story. I got really attached to the characters. I found it so interesting. And I've said this before to a few people, but I truly felt at points like I was listening to like a true crime podcast of like trying to figure out what was like. There were certain parts where I was like, oh no, like when the limo driver picks her up and then we think
was like my heart stopped.
I literally was like I was like, no, get out of the car, like as I'm driving. So I loved it, and I can't wait to chat with you all about it because I was completely like, I need this to be like a mini series or something. Like, I think it would be so good. So I really, really, really loved this book.
Well, Stacey, it's funny that I was going to save this for later, but you're like our resident movie and TV and film expert out there. But like, reading this book for me this isn't the genre I normally would pick for myself. I'm really reading it because a lot of people suggested it on the side as something that we should pick up as a break from the heavier books we've been reading. And, when you get to the end, so many people have said, wow, this would make a great, great film. I'd love to see a sequel. I'd love to see it as a miniseries. And I came across a review this morning that says, this one paragraph was so good. It says hold on one second. It says, it's easy to see why its prose is taut, the characters rich, the overarching Me Too themes timely, and the spoiler-heavy plot addictively paced. It's only a matter of time before this is optioned for film. In the hands of a kick-ass writer-director and with the right actresses to portray Claire and Eva, this is an awards contender, something very much in the vein of Gone Girl. And it's funny because a lot of people in their comments over the past few weeks have mentioned Gone Girl, Breaking Bad, and I think a lot of people would love to see this as a show. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Gone Girl meets Breaking Bad, exactly. Yeah. Wow.
Kim.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Stacey, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't put this book down. I mean, it was like you guys. I don't know that I would have chosen this book. It's not my typical genre, but it just captured me from the get-go, and I could not put it down. I ended up finishing it in like a day and a half. It was such a quick read for me, and so different really from what we've read thus far. Like you said, some of the other books were a little bit more difficult to read. This one I just flew through. It was captivating from the minute I started it. So I'm really glad we had this book.
Yeah, and Kim, I always love to see your comments on the book chat threads and everything because you always bring a really thoughtful and interesting perspective. And I think what was interesting to me about this book, it's billed as a psychological thriller. So that's how, and I don't like to read summaries. I don't like to even read the back of I don't even like to read the blurb on the back of a book before I read it, if I know I'm absolutely going to read it. If I'm not choosing it, I'm just picking it up. So this psychological thriller also has so many themes that are really relevant to all of the other books that we have been reading, which is really intriguing to me that this writer was able to weave so intricately a balance between having not one, but two very strong and complicated female protagonists in this book. And also weave in a lot of issues and themes that lots and lots of women out there deal with. It was really intriguing to me at how well written this book really was. It wasn't just like a quick it was a quick read for me as well, but it wasn't a quick summary that I enjoy for the moment and then put away and don't think about again. I don't know about you guys, but I found myself really thinking about some of these characters and situations for a long time after.
Oh yes, me too. And interesting how she weaved the different characters, and she would stun us at every turn. Like there was that one point where they revealed who Danielle was. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like it's I think a lot of thought was put into these characters and especially these two women and their lives, and so it was just very interesting how we followed Claire through the when she was at Eva's, like everything about it, like it was you could tell a lot of thought was put into this plot and how it was going to turn out. And so yeah, I wouldn't have normally chose a book like this either, so it was very, very good, and I couldn't put it down. I was up till like 2 a.m. finishing it the one night, and I was like, I just could not. I had to keep like finding out what was happening. So very, very good.
Yeah, and it's intriguing that it's a book for it's a book about very smart women. Like both Claire and Eva are very very downtrodden because of the circumstances life has brought them, but not because they lack strength of character in any way, and they're both individually brilliant women. So for this author to be able to weave a story with details like she did that are believable to the reader, that someone could disappear on a flight, that someone could maintain, the life that Eva led of evading law enforcement for so long as a drug dealer on the campus of Berkeley, of all places. All of these things, just very, very thoughtful. She has said in some interviews that she used note cards spread out all over her floor to get the details out, and also to make sure that she alternated chapters as much as possible between Eva and Claire, and to make sure that the details of each moment coincided. It's just really, really well done. And
it kept me guessing. It actually kept me guessing. Like I was, wow. Patrick?
Yeah. Patrick.
Yes, it kept me guessing too. I haven't read Gone Girl, so I have not read a book formatted, or rather have a plot where two people just switch places that are random strangers. Mm-hmm. So I was really thinking.
I did it. I did it. I told you I was going to do that.
Sorry. Go ahead, Patrick.
Okay, am I
You
back?
are. It's because the request microphone button is right beside the mute everyone button, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Patrick.
Okay. No worries about the mass muting. But I was thinking, okay, Claire's home free, but there's a whole book to go, so I knew there had to be more to it. The character that really surprised me the most, I think, was Danielle, because at the very end of the book, she comes clean and says, "Hey, I tried everything I could to keep you away from that guy, to keep you on time, yada yada yada." I thought that was a big twist for me. I wasn't expecting that, because I thought Danielle would be the first one to send her up the river, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, they made it sound like that, though. They made it sound like she was super loyal.
Yeah.
And that she was against Claire. And so to me, that took me for a whole other loop when they revealed who she was. They revealed her true feelings and her point of view. I was not expecting that at all.
And that came up in the chat thread earlier today. And it made me think about Danielle again, and how I really disliked her at the start of the book. And then at the end, it was like, oh, wow, she was really protecting her the whole way through. And then going back and skimming through, why did I dislike her so much? It's because everything that we understood about Danielle came from Claire's perspective. And Claire only saw that Danielle was on her all the time, watching her all the time. And it was just such an interesting twist, because I do think that many of us as women, we do watch out for one another a lot, and if we see someone who's in a position like that and we feel helpless to help them, how would we respond in that way? Do you know what I mean? So it's one of the reasons I felt like Danielle was a really, really interesting character. You're right.
Well, it turns out she put herself at some extreme risk too, to help her. With the recording, and she's put herself in some serious situations, and we had no idea, because like you said, it was in the point of view of Claire. Yeah. So.
Which just goes to show that your first-person narrator can be unreliable eyewitness again. Because they don't, they never do have the entire 360 view.
Does anyone else have a comment they want to make?
Looks like
Debbie.
Oh yeah, Debbie.
Hi, Debbie.
Unmute yourself, Debbie.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I didn't realize it was muted. Yeah, what I thought was really brilliant was how she connected Danielle and Liz and Eva all together near the end there. I really thought that was an amazing way, because I wasn't expecting that connection until Danielle walked in the house.
Yeah.
Well, I was hoping Liz would be Eva's mom. That she had cleaned her act up and gotten her stuff together and had moved. I just thought that would have been that was what I was hoping for. I was sad when we saw the obituary.
It's interesting. The two things I'm thinking about there is, well, for Danielle, for me, what caught me off guard is Ellie, or whatever name her mom calls her. It's Ellie, right? Is not a typical nickname that I ever would think of for someone who's named Danielle. Perhaps other people use it, but I don't. So it wasn't on my radar that it would have been the same person.
Yeah, I wouldn't have ever called a person Danielle Ellie either.
And Liz was just...
I've heard Danny before.
Yeah, Danny.
I've never heard. And
Liz was such a compassionate, caring person who was so perceptive about keeping an eye out that... on Eva, that she was really, really aware, which makes sense that Danielle was the same for Claire, but we didn't find it out until later. Do you know what I mean? But, it wasn't on my radar because Danielle was so not likable to me. I was just relieved that Claire got away from her. I really thought Danielle was, in cahoots with Rory. I don't know. Anybody else?
Stacy, do you want to talk about your comment in the chat about the Google Doc? I think that's really interesting.
Oh, yeah. So how Claire, in preparation before her itinerary got switched up, figured out how to log into Rory's account and get access to this Google Doc that, is the only way that him and Bruce communicate to each other as a way to keep tabs. And I mean, as someone who uses Google Docs every day at work, there were some parts where I had to just kind of suspend my disbelief because there have been times where I've had two browser windows open of the same Google Doc. Not real, I just have too many tabs open, and I can see myself in it because I have it open on two tabs. And so there were certain times I would be like, okay, well, even if she's logged in as him and he's in there at the same time, they're gonna notice that another person's in there. But I'm just gonna let that go. I'm going to let that go and just go with the story. And going with it, I thought it was a really clever way to still keep the reader engaged with sort of keep the stakes high. Because otherwise we have absolutely no idea what's going on with Rory and with Bruce. And it was a really clever way, I thought, to sort of still keep us engaged in terms of what's happening on their end and kind of be with Claire in that. Not enough to know their full plan, but little bits to get their convo back and forth where they're how did she do it? They didn't find her body. The bits and pieces back and forth. And also enough to be Roy's an asshole. I knew he was an asshole, but he really sucks, man. He really sucks. So I just thought it was a really clever plot device to sort of allow us to keep tabs a little bit on what was going on over there.
Yeah, and it's interesting about your comments about the validity of the technology. I use Google Docs a lot as well, but I can't remember the updates and changes that happened over time. If the ability to see yourself logged in on two different devices at the same time has always been that way, or if that's an update. I can't recall, but it is an intriguing way to use technology. And the podcast that I listened to this morning, the author, remember I said she's a school teacher and she teaches 5th grade. It was really interesting how she came up with that idea. It was actually from her students because they all have Chromebooks or something like that, and they use Google Classrooms excessively. And she said very quickly the kids figured out that to avoid work in class or to stay in communication with friends, they would just make a shared Google Doc. Very, very early on, when Google Classrooms was still new, the kids were doing this, and it took a while for the teachers to catch on. Yeah. So
I'm going to go home and ask them that.
So she said it was very annoying as a teacher, but as an author, she was like, "Wow, that's a really good idea." So that's what she used. I thought that was just very, very funny.
Well, thinking about the security feature, I think Stacey, I think maybe she was logging in as Rory, right? And so yes. I guess she tried to time it when he was on or something. And I guess he's on and she's on. That's the part I don't get, how it didn't notify him that they were both on. But it wouldn't be out of the ordinary if he's under his password and everything else was on. You wouldn't notice, I guess.
Right.
I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, and then she has also said as an author that, she has childhood friends who work in, I forget what she said, some kind of security. So she would ask for them, like, if you wanted to get a fake passport, where would you go?
Oh, okay.
And then, so she got a lot of information that way. And she also said there were a couple of things about, switching tickets at the flight that she was like, yeah, this could happen in this day and age. But like, as soon as the FAA catches up, you know what I mean? Like, she wanted to make sure the book got out and got traction before all of that changed, because technology and those kinds of systems, to be believable for the reader, they change so quickly. It has to be something that's, believable and current at the time that the book is released. So that was just very intriguing how that all kind of went together. I don't know that I would have had, I don't know, what do you guys think about Claire doing? I felt like that was still kind of gutsy for her to be in.
Claire had to sacrifice her whole phone to make that work. Because her boarding pass was on her phone.
Yeah, but I mean, even just being to log into the Google Doc to spy on her.
That was very risky.
That was very risky.
Mm-hmm. But it was the only way to tell it in her point of view and know what's going on with Bruce and Rory. That was the only way, really, we could find out tidbits about what's happening back at home, so to speak.
Well,
and from her point of view and what she was thinking and her fear or her any type of thoughts she had in her mind, and her to help her plan. So it was a smart thing to put into the story, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think
that
so
and she was checking his email as well.
Mm-hmm. Right, but she was checking the read emails, right? But she didn't want to go into the unread.
Yeah, she'd be careful and not check them, not mark them as having been read until he had read them.
Very, very gutsy.
Very sly. Well, she lived in that Eva's house. That's gutsy too. I was like, oh my goodness, somebody's going to come in and find her. I was feeling really nervous for her that she was staying in the house, because I wasn't sure if somebody was going to come and raid the house or go after her. So it was so suspenseful.
Yeah, over in the chat, Deb Camp asked how many people saw that fish and ducks were the same.
That shocked. That was the moment where I think I said out loud, "What?" That just shocked me. How about anybody? I mean, I almost want to be like, hands up if you were shocked that Dex is not who we thought he was. Yeah, I didn't see that coming at all.
It's like I said before, I didn't see it coming, but then I thought immediately after that, well, why didn't I see it coming?
Yeah.
He's a drug dealer. He's not known for his honesty.
Yeah. I mean, and the fact that he took her past to see, somebody that he had killed and was showing her, because I'm trying to protect you from this person, just to think back to those plot points was, yeah.
Dex was kind of a psychopath himself, probably.
I guess so, but I kind of liked him. Did you not like him? I wanted him to be a little bit of a protector. I was mad. I was kind of mad about that.
He was likable, and that's probably why he was so good at recruiting people to work for him.
Yeah, you're right. Shelley?
Hi, everybody. Couldn't get my mic off.
Hello.
I missed some comments about Dex when I was trying to figure out how to get my request in here. But anyway, going back to your Google Doc thing, majiggers. I know if we had trouble at work with our computers and we had the IT guys on, they would get on a shared screen, and the only way I could tell that guy was on is because he was moving the cursor. So if Claire got on, she said she only got on to view what he was doing. As long as she didn't hit any keys, he wouldn't know she was there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's kind of impressive to me still that this author, there are so many places in this storyline with so much complicated intrigue going on all over the place, that we could poke holes and say this wouldn't work or that wouldn't work. And I really find in the end that there were very few places that I'm like, yeah, that's not believable. Do you know what I mean? She just did a really amazing job. Gigi, what's your comment?
Oh, I was just going back to you talking about Dex and about being disappointed when it turned out he was fish.
Yeah,
and
so disappointed.
I agree, and I felt so badly for her because it's not like they were close. It wasn't like she completely trusted him, but in her little world, he was the person like she was closest to in her life. And I thought, oh my gosh, even though at that point she was already, trying to get out, I thought, what a blow to feel like that entire relationship was a complete lie. And it made me also think about like how she could even maybe question. Liz was so wonderful to her, but you could see why she was still so hesitant to open up to her, because everybody's let her down, throughout her whole life. So yeah, that was a crushing blow when that happened, I thought.
I agree, because up until the point that Liz came on the scene, Eva had literally nobody and never had anybody in her life. And that, to me, I think, Stacy, I know, has said that she really connected with Claire at first. And for me, I didn't listen to the audiobook. So I don't know what you guys think about that, if anybody else has listened to the audiobook. I read. So I was reading Eva in my voice, and I just found her situation to be very like, what would it be like to be so alone for your entire life that you have nobody ever from childhood through adulthood, that the only person you feel you can trust is a drug dealer. And that was the situation that Eva was in. And even when she talked about like what she did with her life, and when Claire showed up in her apartment, there was no trace of like life happening. It was just, she was just kind of existing. But then based on Stacy's comments that she had DM'd to me when she finished the book, I went back and I listened to the audiobook sample and was like, oh, I feel like the narrator's voice for Claire is so much more relatable to me than the narrator's voice for Eva was. And I wonder if that was, I don't know how they hire people for that. Both were excellent. I only listened to a bit, but Stacy, you can comment on this. But Stacy felt that it was just really excellently done. But Eva's voice to me was just not what I expected at all, and I kind of felt a little less connection to her after I listened, and more towards Eva. I don't know. It's interesting to hear what your guys' thoughts might be if anybody did that. Stacy.
Yeah. So in terms of talking about Eva not letting Liz in, I also saw that a little bit too, as like, she was also trying to keep Liz safe. Like, she was trying to keep Liz at a distance, like, especially once she took that little bit of a break, and was like, oh my God, is this what like normal life is? And like going to a game and maybe having a friend. But she was like, I can't have it. I can't let it happen. And even with Dex, I found it interesting too, because she said it quite a few times, like, oh, he wants me to go out and have fun. He wants me to like try and see him as a friend, but like, I know that part of her knew she couldn't trust him even before the reveal happened. So I found that interesting too. Like, she had really strong instincts. And in terms of the audiobook thing, yeah, like maybe, yeah, because the narrator for Eva, I don't know if anybody else listened to all of the audiobook, but the narrator for Eva, yeah, her voice was a little more rough and gruff and colder. And I almost wonder if, because that's maybe a little bit of a representation of Eva's exterior too.
Yeah, you're
like
right.
Right, like she is a little bit of a more of an abrasive personality, and that could very much be like a protective, mechanism. But and I think maybe just because we started with Claire, like the first like 3 or 4 chapters are Claire, and then the first time we're really introduced to Eva, she's tricking Claire, right?
Right.
So and then when we get Eva's point of view, we're going back a few months and she's seeing this student be beat up, and then we're going back 6 months. So I think it could have also been the way that her story was fed to us. Like, we started at a different place with her than when we did with Claire. So I think that also like impacted it for me. But both of the actresses that did the narrators for Eva and Claire in the audiobook were awesome. Like really so engaging. And like, I found particularly with Claire, like the way that she would just subtly alter her voice to be Danielle, or to be Bruce, or to be Rory, or to like, was like really, really, really interesting. Like, it was very subtle, but like, I was not lost once. Like, I was able to follow it. I found it so interesting. And I really loved, like, this was a perfect one for me to choose to do an audiobook for, because it was like, I think it lended itself really well to it.
Yeah, and there's a great plug for the audiobook, because I'm going to be buying the audiobook to listen to in my car now, because I really want to hear these things. And also based on some of the comments in the Twitter chat thread about, do you think this could happen in the end? A few people were making comments about that. It's a book worth reading again, I think. Gigi, what do you want to say?
Oh, I actually just had a question because I didn't read anything about this author or anything about the book beforehand. I literally just finished the book less than an hour ago, so I'm still in shock by the ending. Yeah. I just wanted to know if she is from California, because I am in California, and her details for the area, like what Berkeley's campus looks like Sausalito, just the views, everything. I was just like, oh my gosh, she is just nailing it. Is she a Northern California person? She is.
She's from California. I'm looking at her bio right now. It's not saying it on here, but I have read before. She lives in Los Angeles. And she is born and raised out there, and that's why she has said she picked Berkeley, because she's very familiar with that area. She does have a website. It's called JulieClarkAuthor.com, by the way. And before, if I forget to say this later, I did post it in our tweet, but if you liked this book and this genre, she does have a new book out that's making in June 2022. It came out, and it's getting great reviews as well. And that's
on my Christmas list.
Yeah, it's called The Lies I Tell. And just the reaction to this book, I really thought this book was going to be like a break for us, like just to read something that was a little less thought-provoking, I guess. It was going to be just something that was really enjoyable. But wow, there's just so much to this book. Like, we haven't even touched on a lot of the themes or anything yet in this chat, and people, there's just it's just well worth reading. So I'll be reading her next book. I don't know about you guys, but that's where you can find it. Does anyone have any other comments they want to make before we go on? Okay, so I kind of pulled some of the top quotes. I read this one on my Kindle, which I don't like to read on my Kindle. I like to hold a book in my hands. But if I have a book that I don't think I'm going to read again, I buy it on my Kindle sometimes just to save storage on my bookshelf and that sort of thing. I kind of regret it. Because I did like this book a lot, and I'll be reading it again. But I pulled, you can see all the quotes that people highlight on the Kindle, which was really interesting to me. And I can look at the top quotes that were on there, and I know quite a few people felt that there were a few that were really intriguing to them as well. So one of the top quotes that was highlighted, I put in our chat, which was, "What I've learned in life," and this is from Liz to Eva. "What I've learned in life is that in order for true forgiveness to occur, something has to die first. Your expectations or your circumstances, maybe your heart. And that can be painful, but it's also incredibly liberating." Another highlighted quote was, "If we don't tell our own stories, we'll never take control of the narrative." And then a big one that several of you on Twitter over the past few weeks have brought up to me. This is one that one of our readers had said was on page 150, but on my Kindle it was on page 134. And it's it's a quote from Claire. "Are we who we say we are, or do we become the person others see? Do they define us by what we choose to show them, or what they see despite our best attempts to conceal it?" I just found it so intriguing that a psychological thriller like this just had, these really deeply thought-provoking things to say about women. When this was written and released, it was in the heart of the Me Too movement. I don't know. Does anyone have anything they want to comment about those kinds of themes that are happening, or quotes that are coming up in the book?
I think the part about forgiveness can be applied in most anything, but it was something that line actually resonated with me too, with what she said, because it's true. Something has to give. There has to be some change or switch, or there has to be a circumstance, like the expectations or acceptance of a situation, and then you can proceed to forgive. It doesn't mean that you forget. It just means that you forgive and you can move forward yourself. Because, holding such bitterness or a grudge or whatever it is, it's like, drinking poison and expecting the other person to feel it, right? And it's, you're the only one it's eating away at. You need to do something with yourself, accept, adjust, so.
Yeah. Kim?
I was just going to say, Eva's last chapter was, I thought, one of the best in the whole book. It had so many incredible learnings and quotes. I just wanted to highlight another one. You said one of them, which is, the one about true forgiveness. Mm-hmm. Another one I thought was really great is when she said, information is power. Eva could walk away with no regrets, knowing for certain the past held nothing of value for her. That sometimes the death of a dream can finally set you free. I loved that quote.
Yeah, some of these I just want to write down and keep looking back on it. They're just really, I don't know how, I would like to, if I could ask this author one thing, I think it would be, how did you think of all of these brilliant lines to say? I mean, there are just so many that just really struck you from both Eva and Claire and made them, I think, relatable for all of us, even if we haven't had the kind of past experiences or life experiences that they were enduring, Stacy?
Yeah, I mean, all of the quotes that you just sort of rattled, like they're all so heavy.
Yeah.
And they're so profound too. And like kind of going along with what Lisa said about, to truly forgive, wow, to just think of, to be in your brain and be able to think of, to truly forgive, like something in you needs to die. Like a piece, like the expectation, the whatever it is, in order to let go and move forward. Like that's one that I'm like still definitely sitting with. And the struggle with the audiobook is it's hard to go back and pull quotes because you don't have anything to look at. Mm-hmm. But from the ones that you had just sort of rattled through, I'm posting, and it was Claire, right, that said, if we don't tell our stories, then like who will, kind of, or something similar to that.
Yes, that was Claire before she appeared on camera.
Right, before the big interview,
yeah,
right?
Before the big reveal, yeah.
Yeah, and I find that one really interesting too, especially given when the time when that book came out. Mm-hmm. And I just, there's a lot of weight behind that too, where, because there is still, I think, such a culture of silence in so many things, right? Whether it's abuse or assault or mistreatment or pain or racism, sexism, like all of the things, I still think there is such a culture of silence, and there's still such a belief in some parts of society where you just like shut up and deal with it. Like, why, like, don't whine, just like do what you're supposed to do. And I think there's such power behind that. Like, okay, well, just because this is the way that it's been doesn't mean that it's right and we should all just keep going with it. And just because this is the accepted thing. So I find that statement really, especially as she was about to, like, she knew she was opening herself up to criticism. She knew that she was going to get some people coming at her saying she's lying or she's wanting attention or she's whatever. And especially given the position of power that her husband was in.
Yeah.
So I just think, especially given when that book kind of came out, I just think it's a really, really timely thing, and something I know that's kind of sticking in my mind too. There's a lot of other quotes too,
and if you haven't read, I don't know if it's on the audiobook, Stacy, but for those of you who have print copies, at the back is a conversation with the author. I don't know if anybody read that, but she actually talks about this there, and she says, in reference to what you were just saying, Stacy, I wanted to acknowledge how hard it still is for women to come forward with their stories. Even in this era of Me Too, the cost remains high, both personally and professionally. Just because we have a name for it doesn't mean it's fixed. And so that conversation with the author at the end of the book is well worth reading if these kinds of quotes and things were impactful for you. Gigi.
Yeah, when she had to go on CNN, I was still so scared for her. Like,
for sure.
And I'm so glad that the limo driver was, the person picking her up from CNN. I was so shocked by that. I was so relieved. But I kept thinking, oh my gosh, like I still had such fear of her husband that I thought, she's not going to get raked over the coals. I mean, it's so timely, like Stacey was saying, that we've just seen this over and over and over again, where, you know, the woman comes forward and then her entire life history is put out there, and like you have to be like a perfect person to make any kind of accusations. And I just thought, I just hope this is going to end the way she hopes it does, and that's the way I was hoping it would, and I was relieved that it did. She did talk about, you know, some people having negative comments, and of course what we'd expect, but she came with so much evidence that I'm glad that it worked out to her benefit. But still, that had me on my edge.
Yeah, I had to put the book down actually at the limo part because I was just so worried for her. I had to take a momentary break and go get a drink of water because I really did not want it to come down to her getting in the wrong car with the guy with that tattoo. Do you know what I mean? So that whole thing. Diane, welcome.
Hello. Sorry, I was late. Can you do me a favor? Just read. I wanted to say something about the identity quote.
Okay.
Can you just reread that for a second?
Let me find it. The identity quote.
It was the third quote that the third.
The third one that I read?
Yeah.
Okay. Are we who we say we are, or do we become the person others see? Do they define us by what we choose to show them, or what they see despite our best attempts to conceal it? And that was from Claire.
Yes. The reason why I wanted to go back to that is, number one, I thought that was incredibly profound.
Yeah.
And when we start to sometimes become a habit of ourselves, or sometimes, you know, it's like you are who you are. It often happens and is really potent when you go back home. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know about anybody else, but you go back home, you know, here you are, the successful woman out in the world, and you go back home and suddenly you are that 16-year-old and so it's interesting for people, if you do not have a strong enough interior, how people can fluctuate and make you, or not make you, but encourage you to be who they think you should be. That was number one. But number two, what was more important to me was I was crazy about the friendships in the book all over the place. And what I really appreciated is both Liz and, is it Kelly? Was Kelly the one who befriended Claire?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. What I loved most about them is that they knew very little of the women, and yet they extended themselves in friendship.
Yes. That's a very good point. I didn't think about that. Very good point.
And I just thought that says an awful lot about women.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how we reach out. Anyway, that was just one thing I wanted to bring up. I really did like the book.
I'm glad that you brought that up, Diane. You always have great, insightful things. One thing I'll come back to later, but the thing about female friendship is in the conversation with the author. It's just really well written at the end. So I'll read this to you. It says, female friendship is incredibly important in this story. And this is from Julie Clark, the author. We can all think about that one friend who showed up right when we needed her, giving us exactly what we needed to push us forward. I've been lucky enough to have some amazing female friendships, and as a single mother, it's especially important to have those touchstones. My friends keep me sane. They make me laugh. They listen to what I'm struggling with and step in to help in innumerable ways. Humans are by nature social animals, and while I'm a dedicated introvert, I rely on my friends every day. So, yeah, you're spot on that was a major female friendship was a major theme that this author wanted to put into that book, and I think that that is something that ties us together as women. It's one of the reasons that we're doing these book chats with people across the world on Twitter, because we made connections through books and reading and chatting and social connections. It's just such an important part of who we are. And for me, with Eva, going back to I know when I connected with both characters, and I know there was some discussion of, or did you feel more connection with Claire or with Eva? For me, it was Eva, and I think that it was because I felt such regret for her that she just didn't have any of those kinds of friendships that those of us hopefully here have found with one another and also in our lives off of social media. But yeah, that's a huge theme.
I think with Kelly and with Liz, there was the level of intuition there, right?
Yeah.
They sensed that these new friends of theirs needed help. And, in the case of Kelly, I think that she had seen Claire enough and maybe gathered information in our own mind like we do, like it makes some observations, maybe we can relate or not. And then what I also liked is that they didn't really pry, but they were there. Like they made themselves known that they knew something was up with each of them, but they didn't press it any harder than Eva or Claire would allow, right?
Yeah.
And they respected that. And so I did appreciate that about these women and the friendships that they had together.
Yeah, I agree. Stacy.
Just jumping back to what Gigi had mentioned, and what also you had mentioned about the limo scene and the stress we felt as readers or listeners in that moment. And Claire had a really brilliant, she said something really profound, I thought, when she found out, okay, no, like, false alarm, this is actually, like, she was like literally planning how to jump out of the car when she got into this tunnel.
Yeah.
And then, and then something happened and she realized, okay, false alarm. But she said something to the effect of, like, this is what abuse does, though. Like, it makes you feel paranoid and second guess absolutely everything. And I, as someone who's never really, thank God, never been in her situation and ever been in a point where I've had to be looking over my shoulder and so paranoid, I really felt for her and for anybody who's ever been in that position, because I was in that paranoia with her. I was like, oh my God, no, this could be one of his guys. Oh no, don't trust anybody. Like, I felt like I was watching an episode of Law and Order or something, where it was like, you're just so suspicious of everything. And I just found when she said that, it really hit me of how awful that must be when that is your everyday existence and you have to second guess everyone and everything. And are they reporting to him? And is he watching you? And is he doing this? And to the outside eye, people might think they look quote unquote crazy or paranoid, but when that's your reality, I just thought it was a really brilliant illustration of what abuse can do to you and warp your reality where you don't know what to trust and what not to trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And then going back to Lisa's comment that these women friends who weren't that closely connected to them otherwise, but had a perception that something wasn't right and they wanted to help. I mean, I think a lot of women, even if you're not in an abusive relationship or you're not in a position of having been downtrodden your whole life like Eva had been, can relate to the fact that there have been times where many of us have been in a situation where we didn't feel safe and that we needed someone to come along, whether it was, walking by yourself alone at night and realizing someone's following you, and are they following me or are they not following me? And there are things that we think about as women and our own personal safety. I think that comes up more frequently for us than it does, that more than people realize. So I think for some of us, when we recognize that fear, we can see a glimpse of it in another woman, even if we've not experienced it ourselves. We do feel a connection and want to help in some way. Teresa. Hi, Teresa. You just have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There you go.
So I was just gonna say hi everyone. The
Hi.
Page 230 really hit home to me, in the sense that I'm a firm believer that, in order to forgive someone and to move on, you really actually just have to look at the relationship that a person gave you and not hate the person. And I think towards the end, Claire didn't hate her husband. She kind of realized that, he loved her in a really bad way, but it was what it was. And I think that recognizing a relationship as is and then being able to move on is extremely important, in the realm of forgiveness.
Yeah, and there's another quote on page 230, Teresa, that I didn't read, but I'll read it now. It's from Liz to Eva in that same conversation about forgiveness. Liz says, because remember, Liz was in a relationship with a husband who left. I can't remember the specific details, but he had just left. So Liz says, it takes a long time to learn how to see the world as a place where people aren't doing things to you. My husband didn't set out to break my heart or Ellie's. He was just acting on his own desires, living his own story. I hope I've become someone who doesn't get angry when others are just trying to get by. I hope I can be the kind of person who looks toward forgiveness first. I liked that she brought this message forward to show forgiveness as not something that just happens, that you just start to feel. It's more of a decision that we have to participate in for ourselves and our own happiness. Yeah.
Yeah, like 100, like just realize that whatever the relationship with that person that they offered, that is what it is.
Right.
And, kind of go, you can't expect anyone to change. They are who they are type of thing. And then looking at that relationship and being like, okay, is this what I need or is this not? And then moving on from there. And I think that's really important for women particularly, because I think women sometimes, take it to heart. Like, oh, well, maybe it was me and that's why they don't love me, or that's why, they left or whatever. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well said. Val. Hi, Val.
Hi, guys. I wanted to say something about what Stacy said. So for me, the scene in the car where she suddenly thought that she was in the wrong car was extremely important, because up until then, or maybe up until that situation on that party where somebody else was named Claire, and she thought, oh, damn it, they found me. It wasn't to me, she felt like, or she seemed to be like a very, very strong woman who knew what she was doing, and was I don't know, a master of her emotions, dealing with this and really going through with it. Needs to, you need to have a lot of strength for that. And in that moment, I realized how much she was terrorized by him and how scared she really was.
Do you know, Val, do you remember
that? I needed that scene to really get into that emotions.
The other scene for me along those same lines was when she got up in the night when he was sleeping, and she snuck down into his office to steal his passwords and go into his personal things. Oh my God. I'm I could just feel my own heart pounding for her.
I thought he was going to wake up and
I know. I was so worried for her. It was just amazing. But yeah, that scene in the limo, I was like, no, not after all of this. It can't, why did none of us see it coming? She didn't see it, and neither did we, when he was in the parking lot and she just got into the car. She was so close. And I think, for women who are in relationships of abuse who are trying to leave, it is a very difficult thing. It's not as easy as it sounds. Just leave, for a lot of women. And I did like that this was a window, even though it was a very, very privileged, financially, economically, marriage, that she had a wealth of resources, that she had the ability to squirrel away money for a very long time that a lot of other women might not have had. I just was really glad for that storyline in this book. Debbie. Hi, Debbie. Just unmute.
I had the microphone covered up. I couldn't get it.
That's okay. No worries.
Two things. One thing, when you're talking about going into the tunnel, I found myself screaming into the book, don't wait till you're in the tunnel. You'll be trapped.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here saying, jump just before it goes in, and then they're stuck in the tunnel. Yeah. But anyway, the main point I wanted to talk about was that when we were talking about the female friendships and all that. Mm-hmm. And I think that I've been so used to antagonistic relationships, and especially in these mysteries and one woman out to get another woman and all that I was halfway through the book before I ever trusted Liz.
Yes, I agree. And I think it's why I immediately disliked Danielle. Because, of course, there's going to be somebody who's out to get her.
Well, and I really thought Liz for the longest time, I thought she was part of the cartel.
Yeah.
And just that keeping an eye. Placed there, yeah.
Yeah. Just such a intriguing book.
Oh, it is. I really enjoyed it. The second time, can't believe I forgot that I had already read it. But anyway.
Yeah. I'm glad you read it again.
That's a good point, Debbie, about Liz, because, she mysteriously shows up next door, like randomly moving in by herself and needs help, or, come in. She does seem a bit mysterious, right?
She was too welcoming.
Yeah, so that is a bit strange, and you kind of didn't know a ton about her necessarily. You didn't meet anybody till later. We saw her family or saw her life or whatever, but we didn't really know much about her. She just randomly moves into this place.
Yeah, and she's keeping an eye out on Eva. It was suspicious. You didn't know who to trust. And can I just say I was trusting Dex at that point.
Oh,
That's
me too.
So embarrassing. I can't believe I was taken in by that.
He disappointed me so.
He disappointed me so much.
I did know right off the bat that was it Brittany that lady was a scammer. I knew right away she was a plant. That woman in the beginning, that woman where she goes, the first person that was trying to trap Eva. I think her name was Brittany, wasn't it? I knew right away I should never speak to this woman because this person's either got a wire or they're trapping her.
Oh yeah, the one who then went to the car with her. Yeah, that one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
the housewife who was
drunky or something.
Yeah.
I think back to wanting to trust Dax at the beginning. I mean, that's the one similarity that both Eva and Claire had, was that they looked to these men who appeared to give them some attention and appeared to fill a void and make them feel safe. And those were the ones who, turned on them with Wade and with Rory. I mean, these were powerful men who made them feel important at a time when they didn't feel important outside of themselves.
And there was absolutely no consequences for Wade. Well,
for Wade, there were no consequences.
Yeah, and there seemed not to be up until the end for Rory either. It was just he was just getting away with treating her like this. Nobody cared. They were all turning a blind eye.
It's like the ultimate Me Too story on so many levels.
Yeah,
but that idea that he checks all the right boxes. He's what I think I need. He's what is going to fill my missing holes and stuff. And both of them were not who they appeared to be.
Yeah. Gigi, what do you want to add?
So just talking about the men letting her down, I really felt like Agent Castro, how he really let her down by not being able to get her in the witness protection program, and I could feel everything fade away from her when he totally took away her choice. When he was like, really, you don't have a choice. And it was something clicked in her, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
And she wasn't important enough, or she wasn't important enough that he would give it to her.
And so, she was, risking her life. And I understand that for him, it was a big get, but for, the government, he was mid-level. And so that it was something that they didn't want to spend the money on. But there was this one point at the end of the book where Agent Castro is talking to Claire and is like, I really liked her. I wish I could have done more for her. And I just was like, people just, nobody was ever there to have her back and to help her except for Liz. And when you were talking about the female friendships and the author, and it was how sometimes you do need somebody to come to. You can't always be the strong one. You can't always be the one who has to solve every problem. Sometimes you do need to lean on those friends like a Kelly or a Petra or whomever. But then Claire said this line, and she said, I didn't say what I was thinking, that Eva didn't need anyone. She'd done just fine on her own. And I highlighted it because I was like, Claire, you're so wrong.
Yeah.
Know Eva from what she left behind, and through piecing things together. And then just a page later, Danielle was talking about how her mom said that Eva was a good person who needed to know someone believed in her. And I was like, yeah, Liz gets it. Eva did need people. It's just that there were people who kept letting her down and leaving her. So just hearing that theme of friendship, I feel like that was just so strong in this book, where you could see you really did need to rely on your people sometimes to get you through sticky situations. I think that's why I was so heartbroken by the end, because I was really hoping she would get that.
Yeah. In my heart really broke for Eva, I think, was when she talked so much about her childhood and how her grandparents gave her up, and she assumed it was because they were taking care of her mother, who was a drug addict. And then when she saw the obituary and went searching for her grandparents and showed up on their doorstep, and then decided in that moment not to tell them who she was, because for so long she kind of had harbored this image in her mind of who they were, and had they just taken her in, how different her life would be. And that in that moment, she just realized just how messed up the whole family situation was. I think there were so many statements on this book, not just about, abused women and, female friendship and needing to women have a voice, but also the entire dilemma of what happens to children when they are not born into a family, a loving family that can care for them, and they are released to governmental care and foster care. There's just so many topics that come up in this book that are really, really well done and thoughtfully done. Stacy.
Going off of something that Gigi said about Agent Castro or whatever. There were certain points in the book where the audiobook that I was listening, that I got really, really frustrated with him, because, speaking as someone who has, worked with individuals who have made really bad choices and made really bad decisions, and, of course, everybody has free will, and ultimately everybody's responsible for the choices that they make in their lives. Some people are set up for success more than others, and those correct decisions are easier for some people to make. And so, when Eva was basically in that situation where she's like, well, if you don't get, I know these people, I am going to die. And he's like, testify and then you're done. And, I so felt with her in that moment, because it was very much, I could feel her being like, you don't get it and you don't care. I will not survive this. And she's basically been backed into a corner. And again in her life, she's backed into a corner, and she has no autonomy and she has no way out. And I found it really frustrating, because I do think, unfortunately, the justice system does operate like that sometimes. And I just found myself really frustrated on her behalf. And I was just like, I was like, Olivia Benson would never, if anybody watches SVU, I was like, she would make sure that she's not left out to hang on her own. And so I completely understood why she felt like she had no choice but to disappear. She gathered the information that she did, and she tried to do it his way, and was like, I am not going to get any protection. And she needed to do what she could to survive, and ultimately that decision led to her demise. But I was just really, I thought it was a really good little piece about sometimes how the system, again, it creates this judgment of well, you're choosing to sell drugs, so deal with it, when it's there's so much more to it than that. So I just really felt for her in that sense, and it was really frustrating. And then also, side note, I just remembered also the fact that Claire's husband low-key potentially murdered his former partner. I can't believe I forgot that was also a plot point. And man, and just so many people seem to know it, but we're yeah, he's a little sus, but we just don't talk about it.
They brushed it under the rug.
They just can. I was, and this man's running to be a senator, and people are just we're pretty sure he killed his former girlfriend, but whatever. And I was it, and unfortunately that's really true. That's really real. But I was just God, I hate this man.
But look at who his mom was. He already had that clout of coming from a privileged family.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. It kind of reminded me a little bit of remember when the Weinstein thing started, and I think it was Gloria Allred's daughter, Lisa Bloom, who decided to undercut the victims on his behalf, and you know, side with him and talk. There's like uncovered messages of her, you know, counseling him on how to like discredit the women that were coming up and speaking about it. And like, she's you know, she's the daughter of Gloria Allred, who is like well renowned for like fighting for victims. And it just like, so I just found it, it's really real, because
really
it's like
gross.
There's just people that all around suck. Absolutely suck, and it's kind of disheartening a little bit sometimes.
Yeah, there was a book chat question I didn't include on Twitter because I just didn't want to draw in a lot of political discussion from whatever on a public Twitter link. No, not you and not here, but I mean in the Twitter space we're chatting about it, and then it's recorded and it's posted. But one of the questions was, do you think that Rory was styled after any politician or person in power in particular, or could have been, or I forget exactly how the question was worded. Basically saying, do you think that this kind of level of power and control in their personal life is able to be withheld by, you know, men in power in our society today? That was just an interesting thought.
She's not the first book to have, you know, modeled after somebody like this, right? Because,
absolutely.
I mean, you look at a lot of films, TV series, always have a politician of some sort in this way. Like they always have something happening that's going to, you know, be uncovered or be covered up. So I think it's a common theme, and I think that could apply to quite a few. Anybody, even in my own country, like, is just, I think we've always, you know, you can always think of somebody that you suspect probably has secrets or skeletons somewhere.
And I will say some women too. Like, there are some women in high positions of power that, yes, it is more often that the men get away with bad/criminal behavior. But, like, let's call a spade a spade. There's definitely women in high positions of power that use their connections to powerful men to be able to get away with awful things, or watch and facilitate and enable awful things.
Sometimes more under the guise of being under the guise of innocence of some sort.
So like, you know, I don't want this to turn into like men are bad and awful. Because, you know, there are many women that have done some awful things too, and sometimes leverage their position or leverage their connection to powerful men in order to, you know, push down other women or other minorities or things like that too. So that's definitely it's just real, and I think you know, it's just reality.
Well, power it speaks. Yeah, I mean, it speaks to the distrust of power that we have.
Yeah.
You know, not just this country, I'm sure, but you know, this is the adult child of somebody who was in the U.S. legislature for a lot of years, and you know, we all have this sneaking suspicion that, you know, you go into political life as kind of your average Joe, and you come out a bazillionaire with loads of influence and loads of protection, and he plays into that. So I don't know that, you know, when you ask the question, you know, is there somebody in particular you think of? I couldn't think of anybody in particular, but I could certainly think of the structure itself, and that the privileged position that a lot of folks who are particularly in the Senate have, regardless of whether you're male or female. Well, and our general distrust of it.
Yeah, and the quest for power becomes all-consuming for those who are in a position to gain it. And you'll notice that and the abuse of Claire really started when that came into question, that he needed her to play a particular role in order to achieve the level of power and success that he wanted for himself, but also that his family expected of him. So
we certainly have political dynasties in this country, so it plays into that for sure, and that distrust.
Sure. Does anybody else have anything they want to add?
One thing I think Claire had an advantage of is that, and I'm talking about levels of fame here, and if I want to compare them, Claire was probably not a huge public figure. Like, say, for example, and I'm going to mention names here, but let's say if, you know, Donald Trump's wife said, "I've had one come over to me and I'm leaving," she would have a hard time just blending in because she's so well known, on. But if let's just say Ted Cruz's wife wanted to do that, I don't know what Ted Cruz's wife looks like. So I thought that was interesting in the book that they picked a figure that had a powerful spouse, but maybe she was not as well known, as say somebody on the truly national stage would be.
Yeah.
It's like I have a friend of mine who is a TV commentator or a news reporter, a news desk reporter. And when I watched him for the first time on TV, I'm like, Dave, who are you and what have you done with my friend? Because they act so differently on TV. And, but he said, I can walk around, in the grocery store and stuff and people don't really recognize me.
Yeah. Yeah. And your public persona is your job. We talk about that all the time with, celebrities and their public life and when they are working and then, their private lives when they're not. And I think it's the same for, politicians or anybody who's in the public eye like that. So that was interesting. Anybody else have something to add? Okay, well, great chat today, guys. I really enjoyed this book. I was excited to speak about it with you. And while I'm here in this Twitter space, I can see comments coming through on our main chat thread, which is staying posted on the Balf Nation account, pinned at the top all weekend. So please feel free if you have something else you wanted to add or say, go ahead and add that into the chat. On the Twitter thread, I'll also be posting the link to this soon for everybody to listen to. And before we leave today, I have, it's just interesting to me that so many people are interested in doing book chats and book groups together. We do have a Twitter circle set up for readers. I don't really use it that often, but I'm going to be asking for book suggestions. And I think I'm going to be putting that mostly just in the Twitter circle to reach the people who are really wanting to be reading. So if you'd like to be a part of the Balf Nation Twitter circle for readers, it's open to anybody. You just can, DM Balf Nation, or you can send, a tweet out to me saying you'd like to be a part of it. And I really would like to hear from people what their opinions are, if we should continue doing book chats. Should we change how we choose books? Should they always be books that have been recommended by Katrina, or do we want to open it up to any books by authors that she has recommended? Balf Nation is a fan account that supports the community that has grown around Katrina Balf and her work in charities and the CB Book Club, and we want to keep that connection going because that's frankly how we all got to know one another. Anybody's always welcome here. But I am looking for opinions and suggestions from the people who are frequently here as participants in our book discussions and chats. Okay. Diane, did you have something you wanted to add? No? I saw a request for speaking. So if nobody has anything else that they want to add, please be looking in the next week or so for a Twitter circle. In my Twitter circle, some questions about, upcoming book chats. And if you'd like to be a part of that, let me know or one of the co-hosts know, and we'll make sure that you're in and have a part of it. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Yes, thanks, everybody. You. Have a good rest of your day.
Good discussion, everybody. Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.